Today we are going to have a look at cut content that never made it to World of Warcraft. How exciting. Let's find out what they actually cut.
Classic WoW has a side to it that we've never seen, from scrap zones to removed dungeons, unfinished quest lines, and so much more. When Blizzard set out to make Classic originally, there was such a large volume of content built up that they wanted to put in the game, they physically did not have time to get it all done. The level cap was supposed to be 70, Northrend was seen on early versions of the map, and the Black Temple was even originally a dungeon, amongst many other things. Eventually though, it was packaged together into whole expansions rather than just continuing on patch by patch, and that's become the way Blizzard have done major gameplay updates ever since. Vanilla was really unique in this regard because at its outset it was the only version of WoW.
I actually wish more games would do that. Same with we had the same thing with Skyrim and so many other games, where they have planned so much, like we see here, which we were supposed to get Northrend from the beginning, and then they actually packed this into expansions and stuff. But some of the stuff gets completely cut, unfortunately. But I think that's a nice way to do things as a gaming company. Like, if you had planned to just make one expansion and you have a lot of cut content, how about you just give this game, even if it's a single player game, you give it 2 or 3 expansions. And then you include the cut content and you just polish it a bit, make it look even more nice than it originally was supposed to look and stuff. And maybe spend some extra time in it, make it even better. I think that's what gaming companies need to do. Because I've noticed that a lot of the cut content, including quest lines, are sometimes really interesting and fun. So it's really unfortunate to see this.
Was really unique in this regard because at its outset it was the only version of WoW which really would have made sense if it just did continue through patches instead of your standard expansion with its whole new zones, raids, quests and so on. Currently in the classic WoW space, a lot of people are looking for a bit of vanilla action, be it a fresh, a seasonal or something with a twist on the original experience. So I thought, why not highlight just how much of vanilla was not finished and ask, what if we never did get expansions, what content was cut or moved back, and what is the side of vanilla which we never really got to see. But first, a quick word from today's sponsor, Call of Dragons. Call of Dragons is a multiplayer fantasy strategy game available cross-platform on mobile and PC that combines elements of exploration and real-time gameplay. Call of Dragons has a huge open world with tons of fantasy races, including goblins, celestial, orcs, elves, humans, and many more.
Of course,
Pair
the
up
classic
different heroes together to figure out which skills work best when combined. You can even add special artifact items that further boost their power and allow for you to explore tons of different strategic options to win battles in the way that you prefer. You can further train up your heroes via their own talent trees to modify their skills and eventually unlock their ultimate abilities too, allowing you to match your heroes to how you would prefer to play. Each faction in the world of Tamaris have their own unique cities that set them apart from one another. Humans rely on stone and wood, elves on natural resources and magic, and orcs, tusks, and animal furs. Pick and choose your preference and create the city you want to see in the world. Call of Dragons is from the creators of Rise of Kingdoms, meaning they have first-hand experience in creating strategy games and want to offer a more in-depth experience than simply who has the greater number on their side via a whole range of strategic in-game options. And this is very much scratching the surface. Best of all, you can get that fresh game release feeling as Call of Dragons is set to come out on March 28th. You can download and pre-register right now by checking out my link below. Many thanks to Call of Dragons for the sponsor today. Let's get back to WoW. I want to start off on some loose ends that Vanilla has, things which were started and not finished until in some cases years later. One of the more interesting ones, and a questline which is really easy to miss following through fully, starts right at the end of Uldaman. You know the deal, you beat Arcades, who is about 5 levels higher than anything else in the dungeon because classic dungeon design. The rogue in the party loots the chest before anyone has a chance to say anything, and then you go click the large discs at the back of the room and start the quest, the Platinum Discs. This has you take your discovery back to either Ironforge or Thunderbluff, which will give a follow-up reward with some potions and a nice 14 slot bag too. But that is not where this questline ends. The bit people often miss is this unlocks a new quest which you are not directed to in any way because classic quest design called Portents of Uldum. Your faction historians have found that there may be a link between these discs you found in Uldaman and a mysterious gate on the southern end of Tanaris, and they want you to take those discs there and just see what happens. Upon arrival, a pedestal sits outside of the gate. When activated, it states the player must also have the Plates of Uldum before access can be granted, and since, well, you don't have them, it's back to your faction's capitals to report on this, with the quest ominously ending saying, "Be sure to check back with us soon, Uldum beckons." In reality, it was not beckoning very hard, as this is where the quest ended, and Uldum as a zone would not officially release in World of Warcraft until Cataclysm dropped some 6 years later.
I see, so this was supposed to be the entrance quest for Uldum. That's fascinating. Like, Uldum is actually one of my most favorite zones, to be honest. Like, I love the design, the look of this area. It gives me, like, ancient Egypt vibes. Like, seriously, I wish there was actually more going on in Uldum and we get some update where we actually can do stuff there again.
You can still see loads of comments from players who were wondering where this story would go after having finished it. Also, I was curious, so I went and had a look for the discs of Uldum in-game as a physical item, and I could not find them referenced anywhere. There's only replica discs that were added as a trash item when Uldum as a zone was revisited during 8.3 in BFA. I guess for Kata, Deathwing just kind of blew the gate off or something. That sounds lore-friendly enough to me. Maybe there could be a way to obtain these discs of Uldum in Vanilla, like some kind of attunement, and then open Uldum as a new late-game Vanilla zone. Speaking of quest chains that ended rather abruptly, there is another big one that so many people will have done, and very few ever ended up following through. So after battling through hordes of undead trolls, solving puzzles, and reminding your group to kill every dragon mob in sight, you eventually make it to the final boss of the Sunken Temple, the Shade of Aranicus. It can be a bit of a tricky fight due to his level and spamming CC, but once he's down, you get the Chained Essence of Aranicus, a trinket that poisons enemies in a small area around you, which is okay. It can be useful in AoE pulls, and for debuffing rogues in PvP so they can't constantly re-stealth. What you also get here is a start of a quest to go and speak to Itharius, who is using the amazingly...
Imagine you would have gotten the Blood Elves in this state as a playable race. Like this old school model. Like that would have been so creepy, bringing this kind of person along with you that looks like that, right? But yeah, like they had some really, really funny models back then, those Blood Elves. Like you knew they were like freaking Blood Elves. Like you can immediately tell, right? They look... Actually, from the model, I think they look the closest to the OG Warcraft 3 model, right?
Scuffed old high elf model. To proceed further, however, you have to hand in your Chained Essence trinket to the quest giver, which can seem like a pretty big price when half-decent trinkets are just kind of, well, non-existent in Classic for the most part. This then has a follow-up where you have to journey across land and sea to the faraway Winterspring to talk to Umbrance the Spirit Speaker, where the quest just randomly ends. There isn't even a mysterious cliffhanger, it's just straight up not finished. In fact, the quest makes it sound like you're going to need to collect some object for the Spirit Speaker to allow him to contact and help Aranicus. I even found a comment on Wowhead.
This is the same like with the disc, and I don't like this kind of quests that are like cut, opened almost, you could say. Yeah, I'm just calling it cut opened. Like instead of cutting them short, they cut them open, kind of like. It sounds brutal, right? But seriously, it's like a quest and it ends, but there's not even like an ending. Like, at least it could add like a dialogue. Oh, I'm sorry, I heard news from my master or something that I must go to some place. Thanks for helping me out. Maybe we can get back to it in the future. Even though we never get, they could always say we can get back to it in the future, but I have to go now or something. Like, they could at least add like one small dialogue or something to this NPC if they already removed the rest of the quest. Or just shorten the quest so you only have like not 5 steps to finish it, but like maybe 3 steps or something, right? But don't cut everything away unless you give it a good sort of ending or something, like a short version of it.
Quoting a blue post on this premature quest ending, saying more will be added to the Aranicus
quest chain in a future patch. Right?
I can't reveal anything further at this time, but from what I've seen, it's going to be really cool and fairly rewarding. Or neither of the above. I have a feeling this could have been linked into the Emerald Dream storyline, which we can talk about later, that was also not finished during Vanilla. Similar to Uldum, this could serve as a point to pick up an interesting storyline for players to explore, or at least finish a quest line and add in some kind of other reward, since you had to give in your trinket for a bit of XP and gold. One more quest related one now, or I guess more of a reputation grind. So far north in Winterspring are the creatively named Winterspring Trainers, which consist of one night elf chilling, quite literally, on top of a rock. Farming rep through repeatable quests with this one-man faction will eventually unlock the Winterspring Frost Saber, unique recolor of this mount, so you can stand out a little bit in the crowd. However, it being a night elf, it's gonna be alliance only. But what if I told you the Horde was supposed to have their own counterpart to this quest in Vanilla 2? Because I'm pretty sure that they did, but it just never got finished. In Ungoro Crater, there are two NPCs, one to the southeast and one to the northwest, who are part of the Ravasor Trainers. Both of these were removed at the start of TBC, but in Wrath you can head over to Morvek in the southeast and start to learn how to tame and eventually own your own Venomhide Ravasor. These quests are really just for the completionist who want an excuse to play the game more and chase a hard mount, but it would be a pretty easy.
But the good thing is about this alliance mode now is you just need to have an alliance character, unlock the mount, and you can use it on your hard character too. Because in retail WoW now, like mounts are no longer in your inventory and you have to like carry them around. They're actually in your collections, and it doesn't matter on which faction you're on. Like that's a good thing.
Thing to add into Vanilla to mirror a piece of content which ended up being alliance only. A much bigger part of the game next, and one that underwent many changes from alpha to release in Vanilla, those being the NPC and character models that we used in the game. I read online now and again that some people are interested in using updated models in Vanilla, but what if we went the other way instead and brought back more usage of the older alpha models?
How do they look like? To be fair,
they are used now and again. In the Dead Mines, the Defiance miners are using the old human worker variants, and Defiance ambushers can spawn as part of an event just outside of Stormwind. These guys have a more thin, roguey type appearance.
I actually wish we had that for humans in WoW, and I tell you guys why. So if you're a mage and you're like super muscular, you have to ask yourself, where are those muscles coming from when you're behind books studying the arcane all the time, right? Like, I feel like humans, like for rogues, for example, okay, some rogues maybe work out and they're like also muscular. But if you are like a human priest, a human warlock, or a mage, where do the muscles come from? Like, seriously, this is sometimes what I'm wondering, like, why is my character muscular when I'm a freaking caster? It's so weird, right? Like, yeah, hunters, rogues, and any caster class, they shouldn't have so many muscles. For like paladins and warriors, yeah, it makes sense. Monk too, right? Like monk, okay. You're a martial arts specialist, right? So it makes sense, right? But for like casters, like mages and stuff, that's weird. So this old model would have been cool if we had this kind of body shapes as in the customization. I think they should do this in the future with WoW, add body shapes. So you can have like a chubby version of a race, a skinny one, and a muscular one. And for, yeah, both, of course, female and male.
Certain South Sea pirates also use old models too. There's actually plenty of examples that made it into the live game. But do you remember the old character models that there used to be? Some really didn't undergo too many changes, such as Night Elf or Tauren. Others, however, like Early Undead or the infamous female troll, are a little bit different from the end result.
Wow,
when you see some of these old models, you do start to realize why Blizzard in some cases decided that they would be better off canning them rather than trying to shoehorn them into the game somewhere. But perhaps it could be a bit more variety to character customization, add something to the appearances we are used to, or just to throw some of the questionable models back into the game as NPCs or enemies. But the area where the most content didn't make it into the game compared to how much was planned has to be zones. Which is crazy if you think about it, because Vanilla is by a huge margin the largest version of WoW ever. Among the capitals of Azeroth, the one that perhaps underwent the most changes was Ironforge. Alpha Ironforge was very different to the end result that we got on launch, with far more narrow pathways throughout the city, bridges all over the place on upper levels to support houses and stores, And the central Great Forge was, well, a lot more forgy as opposed to the huge pool of lava that we have now. Comparatively, Ironforge these days is a lot more open and has more of a grand and majestic feeling to it, as opposed to a more dark and gritty dwarven city. Explorers over the years in World of Warcraft have also shown off old...
Yeah, but if you look at like, yeah, let's have a look at like how this looks like here again. So it's kind of like everything's like crowded, right? So if you're especially like a new player to the game, you have a hard time actually finding the places where you need to go. So I do see why they simplified everything, made it more open. So if you're, for example, new to the game and you have like no clue where you need to go, you don't get frustrated because everything's open. You just walk through and you see the marker on your map. Okay, here it is.
Warcraft have also shown off old Ironforge, or the Hall of Thanes, an unused location underneath Ironforge that was present in game files and can still be explored to this day if you know how to clip through the wall. This location was later used in the 4.1 PTR during Cataclysm as a return to this particular area to give players an official chance to see what had been lurking below for all this time. Next up, Ashara. It always felt like a zone which was lacking on content. Aside from a couple quests
I feel the same way.
Border Alliance, a location for plenty of the Sunken Temple class quests, and the incredibly inconveniently located Duke Hydraxis, there ain't all that much there, and there's quite likely some good reasons for that, because content was planned for Ashara, but it just didn't end up happening.
I heard there were more Naga quest lines, right?
Both of which ended up getting scrapped. The Ashara Crater Battleground. This was going to be another PvP addition to the game with a more Dota or MOBA gameplay theme to it. Though how that would have worked in an MMO, I'm not entirely sure. But if Blizzard did do it then, there would have been a very early adopter to the third-person MOBA. This Battleground...
Actually, this with Ashara with the cut Battleground, I saw someone posted this on Reddit. And it was like really cool, right? Like the whole layout of the map, how like this one side has like Alliance, this one has like Horde and stuff. And how you actually have like the elevations, like some areas are like a bit higher, some a bit lower and stuff. It actually looked like such a fun map to actually PvP on.
An MMO, I'm not entirely sure, but if Blizzard did do it then, there would have been a very early adopter to the third-person MOBA. This Battleground idea was in consideration as early as patch 1.3, and will be a repeat topic for Blizzard during Wrath, and was even brought up for Mists of Pandaria. Unfortunately, it fell to the wayside and never came to the light, and has been sitting out as a missing piece of content ever since. These days, I think having a MOBA-type battleground in an MMO, when the MOBA genre has existed for so many years now and is well established, might be a bit of a tough sell. Another major piece of content was the Bay of Storms instance, with many screenshots online of a placeholder portal being in the vanilla beta for this. Back then, every single instance portal looked like the Dark Portal, by the way. Very little is known about what this sub-zone could have held. Was it going to be a dungeon? Was it going to be a raid? Was it going to be underwater? Would it have made Ashara more of an active zone? Probably. If I can say one thing about Ashara though, it's maybe that Blizzard did not want it to be seen. It's a very beautiful zone when you're flying above it, but for a game with no flying mounts, the way the zone is set out can be very frustrating when you're either doing some Olympic-length swim to get between quests, or trying not to fall off a cliff to your doom.
I heard actually they were not sure if they were ever going to add flying mounts. Like some actually of the devs recommended to like their mates, like, hey, I think we shouldn't add flying mounts, like we should give people just ground mounts. And there are some MMOs that actually do have only ground mounts. A good example is ESO, and I think when it comes like Elder Scrolls Online, they also want to make it like where you actually need to explore every single corner, and where you need to go, if you want to go to like, let's say D, so you have to go to B and C first. And I kind of like that we can fly now. It's more convenient in WoW, but you also miss so many spots, and there are like some corners in Azeroth that are now already completely forgotten. Like people even no longer know, oh, there's this zone, there's this NPC and stuff, right? Because you just fly over everything and just skip it. So yeah, but it's more convenient though. So it has like a downside to it, but it has also some pros to it, right? That you can fly.
When you're either doing some Olympic-length swim to get between quests, or trying not to fall off a cliff to your doom. Grim Batol is another sub-zone with an interesting story that could be realised in the game. As a short rundown of one of the stories that's happened there, it was once home to the Dragonmaw clan, where Alexstrasza was held captive. Grim Batol served as a base of operations, where the Orcs aimed to raise a secret army to lay waste to the Alliance. However, an unlikely force led by Ronin managed to free her, where she went on to destroy the remainder of the Dragonmaw Dragonmaw clan. Now, we don't need to copy-paste the
revenge.
storyline. Maybe having Alexstrasza being held captive in Classic sounds like a little bit much, but a mid-level dungeon
That'd have been
involving
cool.
the Dragonmaw in the wetlands, that could work. There aren't exactly a ton of dungeons around that area, and it would be very much in line with an existing enemy already found in that zone. Of course, during the Cataclysm, Grimbatol would be brought back and finally revealed as a dungeon, where thematically you ride a dragon in at the start and destroy most of the trash as you begin. Moving on though, the Hellfire Peninsula was also in development during Vanilla, though would only go on to be released during TBC. It was expected to be a later game zone, and from looking at it, it's quite reminiscent of its end result.
Wait, we had flying mushrooms there everywhere. Is that how it was supposed to look like? Yo, what makes those mushrooms fly? They look actually creepy. Like, they look like they have some freaking faces on it even or something, right? If you look at this. That would have been actually quite cool. Like, imagine like you're on a flying mount, right? And then there's like the other faction. And they're like freaking hiding under those flying mushrooms so you don't spot them and come down on your mount to fight against them. Like, imagine you're like a lower level player, and then like some endgame player comes back with his flying mount, right? And you'll see, oh, in the far, there's a player. I hope he did not spot me. Let me walk under one of those flying mushrooms so he has to fly over me. He doesn't see me. You know, that would have been so cool though if they would have kept those. But they would have, like, they would need to give them a better model than this. Like, it looks weird.
Early versions had way more items flying in the air though, similar to how Nagrand ended up being. I think putting Hellfire in Vanilla would be difficult though. It's kind of inexorably linked to the idea of going through the Dark Portal, and once you cross that threshold, well, surely it has to be a lot more than just one new zone, especially when that zone isn't hugely different from what ends up being playable in the expansion. Another piece of TBC content present in Vanilla was the Caverns of Time, located in eastern Tanaris. Through some creative wall jumping, you can get in there, and well, it's basically exactly what shipped alongside TBC. Caverns of Time has always been a very intriguing place. Whenever there's a need to put something in the game which doesn't really fit with a timeline, just throw it in the Caverns of Time, say it's magic, bronze dragonflight, job done. From the culling of Strathol, the battle for Mount Hyjal,
that's how Warlords of Draenor came to be, right?
This place has allowed for the WoW devs to tell many stories from the past, all.
But it's the same with like Warlords of Draenor. Like, they looked for a way to actually get back to the Orklands. Like, TBC was quite popular, and I think when they made Warlords of Draenor, they also kept in mind TBC, and they wanted to have like a zone in the past. Like, how did it look like in the Outlands before all this happened with the explosion, with the demons and all that kind of stuff, right? So yeah, that's how like Warlords of Draenor came to be. But I actually think that's actually pretty cool, like time traveling. Some people don't like that, but it's actually cool to see how things used to look like. Or what if you can go to a zone that's like runes only now, right? But you can go to the Caverns of Time and start a quest line in the past, and you see these runes as a functioning, good-looking city now or something. And there's some legendary NPCs that are mentioned in the lore, right? And you get to meet them. And maybe they no longer live or something, or now very old, but you get to see the younger version of them. Like, I wouldn't even mind doing like a quest line for a teenager Arthur's before he became the Lich King, right?
Over again. Not really sure how much it fits into Vanilla and to what extent it could be used, but if it was, well, Warcraft 3 certainly has enough story packed into it to make many instances off of. One of World of Warcraft's most famous raids ever surely would deserve a chance for a reboot in some format or another. I mean, beyond Vanilla, it's both a raid in TBC and a two-part dungeon in Legion. I'm of course talking about Karazhan. From World of Warcraft's Alpha and Beta, work was already put into this location. I heard it was supposed to be bigger, right? After room being sculpted out, though it was definitely in need of a lot more work. There are also the crypts below, which have been explorable for a very long time. Yeah, but again, they were never used in the actual game until, I believe, Legion for certain artifact weapons, such as the Moonkin Scythe of Arun. Karazhan is a mysterious and magical location, though. More or less anything could go here in regards to it being a dungeon or a piece of raiding content. Maybe you even have it be a zone where the inside of the tower is considerably larger than it appears from the outside. You can always just say it's magic, right? As mentioned earlier, the Emerald Dream has had frequent mentions throughout the Warcraft universe. In Night Elf questing, Moonglade, Druid questing, as well as the huge physical portals that the Green Dragon world bosses guard scattered across the world. The closest we've gotten to an Emerald Dream in World of Warcraft was the somewhat disappointing opening raid of Legion, the Emerald Nightmare. The only legacy that left behind was it being one of, if not the easiest mythic raids of all time. It was cleared in a bit over 12 12 hours on its opening day. Didn't make for much of a world first race, that one.
I did think though this was very fun, the Emerald Nightmare. Like even when it comes like time walking and stuff and like leveling some characters and going to here, I actually have always a great time. I kind of like this one.
A bit over 12 hours on its opening day. Didn't make for much of a world first race, that one. I will say after having defeated Xavius, the area afterwards was a nice look into how the dream would have been.
Should be always
for Classic,
accessible.
there was technically an Emerald Dream in the game files, which as you can imagine was huge open
Maybe it would be a future
fields,
expansion.
alien plants and colossal trees on a seemingly endless scale, though it just never quite found its way.
Yo, I have a great idea. So what if actually Blizzard gave us something like the Dragon Isles in an expansion, but the Emerald Dream, and we get to see the true Emerald Dream, and for some reason we are going there because there's some problem happening at the Emerald Dream, and they show us a large Emerald Dream, and this becomes the future expansion. I mean, we have the Shadowlands, right? And this is so abstract and weird, and yeah, people didn't really like it, but how about like we get like some sort of Emerald Dream sort of expansion, and this would actually be way cooler than the freaking Shadowlands, I think. And you have like those lush forests and stuff. Maybe there's like one area that turns into some sort of desert because there are some issues happening in Emerald Dream, and like maybe some people settled in there, some maybe centaurs or something. Yo, that would be so cool.
Into being a completed idea, even though it was indicated at an early stage that
was supposed to be a zone, right?
Into it, with Jeff Kaplan being quoted as saying, "The Emerald Dream is shaping up to be extremely cool. We don't want to preview any of the content yet, as it is endgame, and we want some surprises for players.
Maybe
the zone is massive and beautiful, and once the content team is done with it, it will be exceedingly challenging. It almost sounds as though there was a lot more done than just a level design here. Maybe what they cooked up back then was used in a future expansion in a not so obvious way. That tends to be the case.
Yeah,
Speaking of content used in a future expansion, the World of Warcraft team at one point were very much considering player housing. Housing had been a feature of many of the successful predecessors to World of Warcraft, such as Star Wars Galaxy.
I love my house in ESO.
And well, Blizzard weren't exactly out to redesign the wheel with World of Warcraft now, were they? From the very outset of World of Warcraft, giving players the ability to create their own home was something under consideration. It just never took that top priority spot to really be worked on over other features for such a long time. Yet remnants of it remain in the game, such as the portal behind a portcullis in Stormwind. This was to be the entrance to the residential district. Eventually, I think we can say one of two things happened.
It's like with Final Fantasy XIV, right? With the residential district.
Draenor's garrison system as it was certainly very ambitious.
I think like Garrison was a nice idea, but the issue I have with Garrison is there's too few customization options. Like, why can I not decorate some of the buildings from the inside? Like, do I want there a chair? Do I want there a bed? Do I want to have a bookshelf there and stuff? Like, it would be cool if we had like more customization options. And I feel like, yeah, this is like also, it was a good idea, but it kind of like ruined it because they gave us so few customization options, and we didn't get to really have our own house in it. Like, if we have at least like one corner that's like our own house, that would have been so cool.
But often left players feeling as though they had a little reason to leave their own instance version of the world, as everything they needed was right there. More social or communal residence could have been interpreted from the class order halls of Legion. Mages got a tower of practice and learning, warriors got a glorious skybound arena, and rogues got a murky sewer. I'm surprised they haven't tried to bring order halls back already, to be honest. It could be a core expansion feature.
Yeah, and now we have more technology,
but we
right?
have never had housing as it's been seen in other games, as in a customizable building which enables you to choose things such as item placement,
housing
decoration,
is nice.
theme, and so on.
Like, look at this.
I really don't know how housing would fit into Classic, whether it makes sense. There is kind of a nice thing about Stormwind, Ironforge, Orgrimmar, and so on being busy.
Could use their
and if you want something to be personal to the player, does it have to be separate? Maybe it just wasn't meant to be.
Style
it
homes
really is amazing just how much content was planned for Vanilla, and to look back and see what was scrapped, what was unfinished, and what just needed a few more expansions to come to life. I think it goes without saying I've definitely been speculating from a Classic Plus angle on this video too, and I hope this shows how much extra stuff there possibly could be in Classic,
Emerald Dream,
whilst keeping things very true to how the game was back then.
Yeah.
Anything else big that you think is worth a mention? Always up to look into the history of World of Warcraft once again.
Some of that stuff makes me sad
always,
because I wish I had it in game.
And listening in, and I'll see you all on the next one very soon.
Wow. Like, there's actually a lot of content, like, a lot of cut content. Like, I knew that they cut quite a bit, right? But I didn't know it was, like, that much. And, like, there was, like, an Emerald Dream Zone. Like, I had no clue, guys. Like, it was actually good that we discovered this video and we had a look at it by Willy. Like, Willy always makes great WoW content and is very in-depth. And we learn so much about stuff, right? But, yeah, like, But those old models, I'm glad they got rid of that. But one thing I'm not glad about is that we don't have like body shapes for customizations. Like I said, if I have like a human mage, I want to be a bit skinnier, not muscular. Like, it wouldn't make sense if I'm like a freaking arcane mage or I'm some demonology warlock that I freaking do push-ups every day and stuff, right? Why? It's weird. So I don't know if we ever get this kind of body shape option, because you have like this in other games, like in ESO also, I can make my character very skinny, very muscular, a little chubby and stuff. That would be cool if we had this in WoW. And like player housing, most definitely would be really cool. I don't think you can do anything wrong with like player housing in MMOs, because every single MMO that I know that has like player housing, and that is like quite popular, I never saw how housing had a negative impact on the gameplay or the game itself, right? Like, does housing harm FF14 in any way? I don't see any harm with it. Is it bad to have housing in ESO where you can even have like a freaking castle with their own park and not just a house? Actually, housing is so huge in ESO. You get like such a big space to like decorate. And I don't see how this harms gameplay. So yeah, WoW with like housing would have been cool. Those quests, they could have given them if they've already cut them, they could at least give them some short ending that's kind of cool. But also like loose ends, it was not so good. But yeah, that was very fascinating to check out. So, which of the cut content makes you kind of frustrated that it's not in-game? Let me know in the comment section which of the cut content you would like to see maybe return to WoW in the future. For me, it's mostly Emerald Dream and housing, of course. Like, I want this to maybe an expansion, that would be so cool. And yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give this one a thumbs up. And I wish everyone a wonderful day. I will see you guys next time.